So the notice of intent to apply for this grant was already completed in January, and the requested amount was $255,319.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Works meeting for March 6th. I have no one sitting beside me today, but we do have online Councilmember Marley Larimer. Also joining me is the Director of Public Works, Chad Barron, and who is taking our notes today? Karen is taking our notes today in Cheryl's place. So we are ready to get going. Councilmember. Oh, and I am Brenda Fincher. I chair the committee. Councilmember Larimer, we are ready for a motion.
Chair, I move to accept the minutes from February 7th, 2023.
I think it's February 6th.
Oh, my apologies, February 6th, 2023.
It has been, second. It has been moved and seconded to accept the minutes from February 6th. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. So, Rowena Valencia-Gica is here to tell us about Washington State Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration Grant applications.
Thank you, Council Member Brenda Fincher. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon, Public Works leaders and staff, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rowena Valencia-Gica, as Council Member Fincher mentioned, Environmental Supervisor at Public Works Engineering. This afternoon, I will be presenting to you the Habitat Area A project, which is part of the bigger Lower Russell Road levee setback project by King County. And you may recall that in November of last year, I already presented this project to the committee so that the city can accept the King County's flood control district's cooperative watershed management grant. So don't expect that I will be talking a lot of details at this time. But let me mention that this project, Habitat Area A, is a high priority project in the 2021 Ryanine Salmon Habitat Plan update. And in fact, it is also a part of the Salmon Habitat Plan strategy, which is intended to protect, restore, and enhance floodplain connectivity. So the project aims to reduce flood risk and also improve fish rearing habitat. We'll be planting native plants and trees, which will be good to replace invasive non-native species. And not only that, this native vegetation will provide shades to make the river water cooler, which is also favorable for the fish. And eventually, once they are grown up, they will also provide organic matter input to the river, which is important for the breeding and growth of marine life. So the overall project is located on the east bank of the Green River between River Mile 17.9 and 18.3 within the city of Ghent. And this area is in fact just downstream of the city of Ghent's new Van Doren's Landing Park. And this includes a portion of the Green River Natural Resources area. So what's this project all about? What we will do is to construct a large off-channel habitat. And in the process, we will be grading and reshaping the riverbank, and also we will be excavating low benches. We will also install large wood structures, which is also referred to sometimes as engineered log jams, just like what you can see in this, in this picture here. And again, as I mentioned, we will be planting native vegetation. And currently, King County is in the process of preparing the 60% design before they turn the project over to the city of Ghent. So before we finalize the 60% design, though, we need to conduct additional environmental studies, foremost of which is the alternatives analysis, and also we have to do wetland design, hydrogeological study, archaeological survey, and also some geotechnical studies. Previously, King County had already formed a habitat work group. So what we will do is to continue stakeholder coordination through that work group that King County formed. And so these studies, as well as the continued stakeholder coordination, will allow the city to continue the refinements, or to at least inform the refinements to the 60% preliminary design. In the process, we will also be monitoring, preparing a monitoring, maintenance, and adaptive management plan, as well as begin preparing some permit documents. And as you can see in this photo, again, this habitat area A will look very similar to Habitat Area B, which is a component of of the Lower Russell Levee Setback project. And what about this grant request? We are asking the Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration through the RCO $300,000 to fund this Habitat Area A project. There is a requirement for a 15% match, which will be fulfilled by the King County's Flood Control District's Cooperative Watershed Management Grant, amounting to $200,000. But before we could continue our grant application with Puget Sound Acquisition Restorations through the RCO, there is a need to pass the resolution authorization. And this is the intent of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments, Councilmember Larimer?
No questions for me.
You know, you mentioned the plantings, and it's just amazing to me that you think of as little as 1 degree can actually end some of the life that's in the rivers. Not necessarily the big salmon that we see, but life that they feed on. And I'm guessing some of the plantings are going to come again from what's grown in our nurseries?
That's a potential, although we'll see what happens as we get closer to construction.
Get through design first.
Yes.
Okay. There are no questions, then we are ready for a motion.
Chair, I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the submission of an application for grant funding from the Washington State Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration Grant in the amount of $300,000 for the Lower Russell Road Levee Setback Habitat Area A project.
Second, it has been moved to adopt the resolution authorizing the submission of the grant for that $300,000 for the restoration grant. And all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. So we are now on to Erik Preston, who's going to talk about neighborhood parking restrictions, which we have been talking about.
We have been talking about. Thank you very much, Council President, Council Member. So yeah, as a reminder, we originally brought these to you about 6 months ago, back in September, at which time you gave us direction to conduct more outreach. And so last month I shared with you that we used postcards. We tripled our response rate. And so now I'm just coming back for action. So in the interest of time, I will skip over quite a few things that we've repeated several times. So first, just a quick reminder, we need 20 feet of unobstructed width required for a fire lane. If there's less than 28 feet, no parking would be allowed, as we're proposing. Between 28 feet and 36 feet would be parking on one side, and 36 feet or more, we can allow parking on both sides. So the first neighborhood is Midori Meadows. And here, 131st Place Southeast is 24 feet wide, and so we propose no parking on both sides. Next neighborhood is Villa Real with Southeast 200th and Southeast 204th Street. This one came to us from the HOA, and the neighborhood is outlined there in purple. The primary street that goes through the neighborhood is 28 feet wide, so we would allow parking on one side. The other streets within the neighborhood are 24 feet wide, and so we would only allow parking, I would allow no parking on either side of the street. In addition, Southeast 200th Street, come on, there we go, would be no parking on, come back, there. In this area, last time we showed you no parking on either side, but that's this small area in black we found is wide enough for about 120 feet, so we would allow parking on one side, in this case the south side, between those driveways. And then down on 204th Street, instead of no parking on the entire stretch, we have a small section of, again, about 120 feet where we can allow parking on one side. So that's the only change since the last time you saw it. So we've added a few parking spots there. Next neighborhood is the Ridge at Panther Lake and the Plateau at Panther Lake. These are two separate neighborhoods that share an HOA. So there are two streets in this neighborhood that are 28 feet wide, Southeast 196th and 113th Place Southeast, where we can allow parking on one side. The rest of the streets in the neighborhood in red are 24 feet wide, and so we would not allow parking on either side of the street. Next is 133rd Avenue Southeast between 224th Street and 224th Place. This very short section of 133rd is 28 feet wide, so we would only allow parking on one side of the street. Next is Southeast 220th Street between 102nd and 103rd Place. This came to us both from police and fire. This section is 20 feet wide, and so we would allow parking. We would not allow any parking on either side of the street. The next section is South 228th Street between 88th Avenue South and the east end of the street. This one came to us from the police department. Originally, the upper photo we took, our postcards went out proposing no parking on either side. Then, after receiving some comments, we modified it to what you see below, where we would allow some parking, but not on one side of the street, here in yellow, but no overnight parking between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Next street is South 243rd Street and 93rd Court South. This came to us from police. And you can see there this cul-de-sac in the shape of an L is 28 feet wide, and so we would allow parking on only one side of the street. Next is 92nd Avenue South and South 222nd Street. This came to us from the fire department. On these two streets are both 20 feet wide, and so no parking would be allowed on either side of the street. Next are a series of nuisance parking in order to restrict undesirable and criminal activities. The first is South 203rd Street near Chestnut Ridge Park. This came to us from the HOA and from police. So currently there's a no parking overnight restriction on both sides of the street next to the park. This would modify it so we would have a no stopping, standing, or parking anytime on the north side, and no stopping, standing, or parking from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. on the south side next to the park. Next street is 3rd Avenue South from the 800 block to South 259th Street in the industrial area. So you can see the red line there from the 800 block all the way to 259th. The street varies in width from 22 feet to 36 feet, but we are proposing no parking on either side because of the overnight parking, litter concerns in the area. And throughout the city, we do not allow parking in industrial areas as a general rule. Next is the 25th Avenue South over on the West Hill. This is between 260th and the south end of the street. So this is a dead-end street. The southern portion is 20 feet wide in the solid red. There would be no parking there on either side, but north of that, it is wider. There'd be no parking during the overnight hours, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Marley? Questions?
Oh, sorry, as I'm mute. No questions for me.
Yeah, okay.
We covered this thoroughly in the workshop.
I have no questions either. So we are ready for a motion.
Chair, I move to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 9.38 of the Kent City Code to add no parking zones and other parking prohibitions on various city streets.
Second, it has been moved to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 9.38, impacting the parking on various streets. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We are now up to Brian Shields, who's going to talk about the Railroad Quiet Zone.
Good evening, committee members. My name is Brian Shields. I'm one of the capital projects managers here for the City of Kent Public Works Engineering. I'm here this evening to discuss the 2023 Railroad Quiet Zone BNSF Railroad Crossing Improvements Project. On this project, we'll be enhancing the pedestrian and traffic safety features at 7 of the downtown corridor BNSF crossing here in Kent, ranging as far south as South 259th and as far north as South 212th Street. We'll be installing upgraded concrete median barriers, providing ADA pedestrian facility improvements, installing fencing, and other improvements as we move towards a downtown railroad quiet zone here in Kent. Due to the anticipated busy construction season that we have ahead of us, City of Kent construction management staff will be unavailable to provide the full-time on-site support needed to move this project along. We've got a tight timeline put on us by the Department of Commerce with the grant funding that they provided for us. We've gone through the selection process where we've determined that KBA Incorporated is the most appropriate firm to provide the construction inspection services on this project. I'm here this evening to request $148,153 to pay for that contract with them, and this money is covered under the Department of Commerce grant. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you. Councilmember Larimer.
No questions from me.
We want to get everything in we can before that grant closes.
June 30th.
We are ready for a motion.
Chair, I move to authorize the mayor to sign a consultant services agreement with KDA Inc. in the amount of $148,153, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Public Works Director and City Attorney.
Second, it's been moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to sign the consultant services agreement with KBA, the amount of $148,153. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. So that will go on. Thank you. And we are down to our final agenda item. David Paine is going to talk to us about the King County Metro non-motorized access grant.
Good afternoon, committee members. David Paine, City Transportation Planner, here to present the Regional Mobility Grant for non-motorized improvements, a recommendation for grant acceptance. This opportunity comes to us through our partnership with King County Metro. Some of y'all may recall a similar grant back in 2020, a Regional Mobility Grant provided through partnership with King County Metro that allowed for the city to design improvements at 5 locations across the city. Well, this is a follow-up to that grant through the city's and the design groups' responsible financial management and efficient delivery. We completed the design of that last year, and King County Metro came to us and said, we still have a balance. What can we work together on in the spirit and the letter of the original funding source? And we have this other project that we can do more with if we have the resources that also happens to have the same conclusion time-wise on the funding at the end of this biennium, which led to the opportunity that we have before us. This would provide improvements at 3 locations in downtown Kent on James, Smith, and Meeker Streets, between First Avenue and Railroad Avenue that Brian just presented on. And this would enable us to do more in those locations. These are also project locations that are included in the tip. You have the reference to the Kent tip in the upper right-hand corner. And again, the 3 locations, this will enable us to construct curb ramp and sidewalk improvements at the locations of Smith, James, and Meeker Streets between First Avenue South and Railroad Avenue South. The grant is for would make improvements such as we see on the screen bounded by the box in orange. And the grant is for a total up to $175,000. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about this opportunity, or that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Councilmember?
No questions. Happy to take grant money.
Yes, so we're going to be getting some ADA curb ramps and some sidewalk work done there. Glad to see that, adding to the safety for our pedestrians. So we are ready for a motion.
Chair, I authorize the mayor to sign a funding agreement with the King County Metro Transit Department in the amount of $175,000, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney and public works director.
Second, and it's been moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to sign the funding agreement with King County Metro Transit Department in the amount of $175,000. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
That is it for our agenda. This was like a lickety-split meeting. Pretty surprising the way this went today. So everybody have a great rest of your week. See some of you tomorrow at our council meeting. And meeting adjourned.